Metrics have a strange power over organizations. In very subtle ways, they can shift strategies, culture, focus of work, reward systems, and even how we communicate. At the same time, not having metrics in place or even having no metrics at all for critical topics can prevent important work from even getting started. In today's video, you'll learn a simple set of tools to structure thinking around ways to use metrics and avoid the traps. You'll even get a Miro workbook you can work through with your own team. Conversations about metrics can often get stalled in endless debate and end in a compromise that misses the point, or even worse, ends up as a meaningless laundry list of things that are easy to measure but don't really mean anything. You can find yourself in that situation where there is a lack of clarity around the purpose of a specific metric or thing, and also when there's not enough of an explicit understanding for what the type of metric something is. To complicate things further, there are often two accidentally conflicting ideas pulling the conversation around metrics back and forth in a debate. First is the need to maintain business as usual and keep everything running as expected or better. The second is the need for an organization to evolve and transform into something that keeps pace with our ever-changing world. When we don't call out which of these we're focusing on, we can often accidentally get stuck debating moving forward with keeping things the way they are. Netflix had to have this conversation internally over 25 years of operation. They started as a DVD rental service in 1998, but became the mega streaming platform they are known as today, and had to think about transforming the market to do this. If they had simply focused on profits on optimizing their DVD rental business, they would have never been able to justify being one of the first companies to develop a major video streaming platform in 2007 that entirely crushed their competitors who were stuck on DVD rentals. The purpose of a metric is to help you guide conversations that make a difference. That means these metrics are rarely one-to-one between purpose and thing measured. One number could mean many things, or many metrics need to be combined to figure out just one really important thing. A number without the pre-discussed thing that matters, it's not worth looking at. So, before doing anything, your group first needs to decide if the specific metrics they're looking for are meant to track business as usual topics or business transformation topics. You can do both, but it's better if you don't mix the two up at the same time. It's better to have two different conversations just to keep one conversation focused. Once you've narrowed the conversation topic down, your team can think about what group of metrics to look at. In general, there are two major categories: the way work is done and the work itself. I personally use the terms operational and commercial, but feel free to use other names such as on the business or process and in the business or value delivery. Just make sure the difference is clear to your team. In addition to those two groups, we should understand if we are discussing something that is an org-wide topic or more relevant to just one specific team. For example, it might be a business as usual operational tactic for a team to keep the level of work in progress low. But on the company-wide level, we should instead be discussing how do we keep a short time to value. To make this difference really visual, you can plot these on a simple 2x2 grid to help everyone see where the different conversations are relevant and even which conversations are missing focus. Simply breaking up what important conversations are into each of these areas will help us start having focused, data-driven conversations which make actions clearer to sort out and eliminate artificial conflicts. Business as usual versus transformational, operational or commercial, team level or org-wide. Constraining our conversations about metrics to one specific thing at a time unlocks the power of focus and highly meaningful conversations. We can easily create a lot of artificial complexity when discussing all of the areas at the same time. Once you've guided your team to a clear purpose to measure something, you can move on to finding the types of measures that matter. One common trap that teams get stuck in is a debate around how to make their metrics absolutely perfect. The problem is, perfect does not exist. Tape measures often only go down to a millimeter because nanometers are not practical to use in most applications. An outdoor thermometer is prone to being a degree warmer or cooler, depending on the surface it is mounted to, wind exposure, sunlight. Even in quantum mechanics, you can't measure the position and momentum of a single particle at the same time to a very high level of accuracy. Yet, when it comes to setting KPIs, we set unrealistic expectations for ourselves and try to come up with something that exists nowhere in the universe, a perfect metric that can't be gamed and has no flaws. It is more productive to identify the types of flaws we have in our metrics and decide how to work with the flaws. We can still put our height on a driver's license, even if we don't know our height in nanometers. We can figure out if we need to wear a jacket, even if the thermometer is a degree off. We can probably make useful business decisions without needing to push ourselves to win a Nobel Prize for discovering how to reach ultra accurate, precise, non-gameable metrics all at the same time. It turns out that measurements of things we care about are either measuring things before that thing happens or after. If you want to set up metrics to discuss revenue growth, something like the count of active offers sent out to customers can be a fuzzy, indirect predictor of revenue, and you might be able to confirm revenue by checking the bank deposits or invoices sent out. So after identifying if your measurements are imperfect predictors or late confirmers of what you care about measuring, we have a few more things to check to really make sure we avoid misuse of the metric. Starters, we also need to avoid debate on perfect metrics just by identifying the flaws and seeing, even with the flaws, if a metric is better than the alternatives or not using it in the first place. Your team should identify if the measure is directly measuring what we care about or if it's a type of proxy metric. Measuring money collected in the bank, for instance, would be a very direct measure of revenue, but the company valuation could be an indirect measure of revenue. And measures of other things like the number of sales calls can sometimes be an imperfect predictor and a proxy metric for revenue. Your team should also get a clear agreement on how accurate and precise the metric is. By the way, those two words, accurate and precise, are often confused by many to mean the same thing. Here's an easy way to explain it to your team. Precision is really about how exact we are in describing something. For example, do we report back in about a week, 5 days, 115 hours, 114 hours, 13 minutes, or even more extreme levels of precision? Accuracy is about how correct the numbers are in the first place. The report was imprecise and said work took about a week, but it was actually 2 months. It's obviously inaccurate. At the same time, if a different report said 5.158 seconds and it was really 5.24 seconds, it might be moderately inaccurate, even though the difference between these two examples is 1/10 of a second and months. As a general guide for your thinking, consider that you don't often need precision to make a decision, but inaccurate data can actually give us an entirely incorrect path to walk down. Generally, more precision with low accuracy is a disaster, but high accuracy can often be enough to be useful. Teams often drag their feet on measuring things because they feel they need high levels of precision that comes from some computer system or a database query, and the creation of a special reporting script to get things going. But this is a trap, and often in pursuit of precision, not accuracy. Often we can just take a quick check of our existing tools to figure out, with high accuracy and low precision, to measure something. For example, if we want to look at work tickets, we could just spend 15 minutes scrolling through the last week of work and take the rough average to figure out what problem category we are in. Writing a complicated API query to get answers like 5.458 days is not more useful, but it is more expensive and a silly excuse to delay start measuring things that matter. Guiding your teams through all of these conversations will help you unlock focus and a deeper type of insight that allows everyone to really understand what metrics matter and how to think about them. I have prepared much of this thinking into a Miro workbook you can use for free immediately after this video. You can find the link down in the description. But before I go, here's a few tips that will help you run metrics workshops with your teams. First, be very picky about what you will measure. Dumping every metric possible into a dashboard is a red flag. We need to have conversations that matter, and metrics should only be there to help guide conversations. Visually overloaded dashboards might look impressive, but they dilute focus, and the only exception is for software developers trying to fix a broken application, and they need all the information available instantly because they don't know what's wrong. Don't let your organization be managed like it's a constant P1 mystery outage that needs a debug dashboard. Second, figure out how to make the metrics into mechanics. Often, the metric will have some kind of relationship where one can influence the other. Having your team identify the relationships turns the metrics from a list into a constellation with structure and encourages them to think collaboratively instead of in job silos. Your team will gain automatic alignment between each other on thousands of small decisions you will never be involved in. Third, recognize that in your first session on metrics, everything can go wrong, and the thinking that took place lacked quality or rigor. That's only a temporary challenge. The real game is to build these skills over time with all of your participants. You may find your organization evolves from first measuring nothing, and then later measuring everything they can, and next they narrow down to measuring what matters, and much later on, after cultivating a true metrics culture, you find yourself surrounded by people with a seemingly magic intuition for the metrics and how they connect throughout your organization. Well, that's all for today's video. If you found this helpful and want to receive similar content, please don't forget to hit subscribe so you can get notified when the next one comes out. And don't forget to use your new Miro workshop with your team.